הבחירה, ימי בין המצורים, is also connected with Teirot, Tfilos, Zdoko, so everybody should give Zdoko. We have the honor today to have a Choshev in German, Rav Avi Aşkенזי, who's going to give us some insight into the building of the base of Mikdash. Rav Aşkенזי, בבקשה.
Okay, Bechal is a known word that when an artist tells you something, you have to believe him because he just learned that day. When the prophet tells you something, it's not lav dafka that he's telling you something that he learned that day. Maybe he's telling you something that he learned decades ago. So it might not be so meduyak. So this is something that I just happened to search upon today. And the concern also is that I didn't get enough time to be and all the pratim, but at least I'm going to try to give the general ideas and the general concept. So there's the Mishnah in Maseches Midas, Perek Gimel, the Mishnah Gimel tells us about the Kaddish and the Mizbeach. Torah tells us that you can't go on the Mizbeach using steps, so you have to build a ramp. And then the Mishnah tells us that the dimension, it says that it's a Kaddish out of the Mizbeach. The Kaddish was on the south side of the Mizbeach, as you enter the Mizbeach on the left side. It was 32 amas long by 16 amas wide. The Mizbeach itself was 32 by 32, was a square, so the Kaddish was like something similar, 16, just half of the side of the Mizbeach, and 32, the same exact measurement of the Mizbeach itself. And then in the Perek Hey Mishnah Beis, the Mishnah is telling us about the measurements of the whole Azara, the Oivet of the Azara from the entrance of the Beis Hamikdash, from the time after the Ezra's Nashon, from up into the southern side, and also the Reich of the Azara from the Mizrach side to the Ma'anev. And then the Mishnah goes on to explain us the and then the Mishnah gives us the pratim, and it says that it's often the door of the year it was 135 amas do not suffer the door on the sides of the Beis Hamikdash. And then it says a kevesh on Mizbeach 62. The Mizbeach together with the kevesh were 62 amas together. So there's a question: how can it be if we just said that the Mizbeach was 32 and the kevesh was 32? It shouldn't be. That's the question that the Gemara brings in Zvachim. Based on base. So the Gemara explains the nimtza perech amal al yisod ve'amal al sever, that actually when the kevesh we say that it was 32 amas, it's covering part of the Mizbeach. It's covering an amma of the yisod. As you know, the Mizbeach was not cube; it was going up and down. And the Rambam explains also that you go up a little bit and then go in, up a little bit in. So the kevesh covered one amma of the yisod and one amma of the sever. So there you have two ammas that are covering each other. The kevesh is covering the Mizbeach. So there you have it. That it's not 64; it's 62 because the kevesh is kind of on the Mizbeach. So that's why we come to discussion that even though the kevesh was 32 amas long, when it comes to putting them together, it was only 62 amas and not 64. And the same we find in Rambam also in the talking of the base, and also in Perek Hey. Now, just a few points. That when the Gemara says Yisod, doesn't mean there was a Yisod because there was no Yisod on the Tzad Ma'arev. When the Yisod didn't go around the whole Mizbeach. So the first to explain that it was the only connected the Yisod, where the other the Yisod would be. And also when the Gemara says Amma, it wasn't 6 tefachim. As you know, the Rambam also points out that brought down also the Gemara that it was 5 tefachim. That most of the ammas in the Beis Hamikdash we go by 6 tefachim, the regular amma beinanis. But when it comes to the Mizbeach, the Yisod and Sever, there were 5 tefachim only each. So that also we can have to keep in mind. So the Rambam also brings these halakas in Mishnah, and he tells us also that he brings a little different. He writes that the kevesh was shloshim v'shtayim, also 32 amas long. And he already tells us that he was eating, kind of taking the space of only 30 amas on the floor. It will also cover the am of the yisod and the am of the seven, like we explained. And then later on, Perek Hey Halacha as well. Also, when he calculates the length and the width of the Azara, he also tells us that the kevesh was only 30 amas. The Gemara only says 62. The Rambam even specifies it, tells us that the kevesh was 30 amas long. Now there are two general ways of viewing practically how this was. How was the kevesh next to Mizbeach? There's the Pashut of the Gemara that the Mizbeach was the Kaddish was 32 ames long, but only 30 ames was on the floor. And the Seder, that reach on the curve on the cliff, they would walk actually 32 ames. So sorry, but they would walk and then plus 2 ames on the floor. And these are the 2 ames that we're covering, 1 am of the Seder and 1 am of the Seder. That's the portion of the Gemara. The Gemara says that it's covering 1 am of the Seder and 1 am of the Seder. And there you have it on the floor itself. You would have 32 ames, 30 ames of the Kaddish itself, 2 ames of that, the first 2 ames of the Mizbeach, and then 30 more ames of the rest of the Mizbeach, and then you have up to those 62. That's the Pashat of learning the Gemara. But then there's another way, which is the Rambam brings in Pirshei Mishnayos in Maseches Midas, that he says that no, that 32 ames means the length of actually the surface of the ramp. When you go up the Kaddish, the hypotenuse of the triangle, that's the 32 ames. That's what the Gemara means when it says that the Erech of the Kaddish was 32 ames. And when the Gemara tells us later, the Mishnah tells us later that it was 62, it happens to be that the base, together with the Mizbeach, the Kaddish was like 30 ames. That's the other way of learning the Metzius of the Kaddish. Now, one of the questions that comes up is not only in terms of when you measure the length and the width of the Zara, so there's another important part that it says in the Gemara also, that Shimon Rechai says that there were Avid Shebin HaKadosh HaMizbeach. There was a space between the Kaddish and the Mizbeach. As we know that for Dam, he has to be Zrika, and the Gemara learns for Dam that you also by the Kabbalah is every time they had to put something in the Mizbeach, they had to toss, they had to throw. Therefore, you also need a space between the Kaddish and the Mizbeach. So the question comes up when both the Gemara, the Mishnah, and the Rambam tell us the dimensions of the Azara from one side to the other side. They say that about that space that we speak about in the Gemara that there was between the Mizbeach and the Kaddish. What about that space? It doesn't mention anything in the Mishnah, or the Rambam doesn't mention anything about it. So there are different ways of explaining that. And by the way, the Tosfos says that this space is not something small. This is the Gemara says that has to be Yaviv Gadol V'Nikrat, something that's recognized, something big, something more than the dam, more than the whole biur, and how the space over here is more than the next halach in Rambam that he says it was only like the Chut, and then that's what this says. Even though Rashi and Chumash says differently, there's different Pirushim in the Mishnah was different, or maybe some others. But bottom line is that we see that from this it was a big space. So what about that space? Where did it go when you calculate the width between the Tzafin side of the Azara and the Daran side of the Azara? What happened to that Avir that was between the Kaddish and Mizbeach? So like I said, there are different ways of explaining this. I'll give 3 general ones. Number one is that you can see that the Kaddish was a ramp that went up all the way to the Mizbeach, and then right before he went a little down, and then he went straight down to where it was the base. So that space that you can say that it was 32, and 32 ames here, according to the Pirshei Mishnayos, 32 on the ramp, and then you still have the space right before the Mizbeach. There's a way of calculating that and including that in the attachment that it's 62 total here with the Kaddish and the Mizbeach, and nevertheless you still have 32 ames of the Kaddish itself. That's one way of explaining. The other way of explaining is that, as we mentioned before, the am of the Seder were only 5 tefachim each. So you have these Seder on both sides, on the Tzafin of the Mizbeach, on the Tzafin and the Darim. So you end up gaining 4 tefachim because you have these Seder is 5. Seder is 5, on the other side you also have 5 and 5. So you end up gaining 4 tefachim that we didn't account for. So you can say that the space was the length of 4 tefachim, but still not enough because many people said it's an actual lemma that it was these 4 tefachim. That's another possible explanation. And then another one is that when we speak about the ames of the Kaddish, someone to find it that the Kaddish also is one of the things that the Mishnah Gemara mentions that the ames were not complete also. Not only the Seder, not only the Seder, but also the ames of the Kaddish. Whenever we're talking about the Kaddish, there was 32 ames. It means there was 32 ames of the 5 tefachim. But then when the Gemara tells us the length of the Azara to the Tzafin, that means regular ames. So there you have it. You have 32 ames. Each amma is missing a tefach when you see 32. But when you count from one side to the other, we're talking about regular ames. You can mention also in the Kaddish and Mizbeach. Just want to mention there's a famous story from the Rebbe. I think it was Chavav Adar Ish in Tashim Beis. that the Dov Levanoni Alav Shalom, he came to the Rebbe and he showed the model of the Mizbeach to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, $1, this was the last time that we had dollars ready for Chav Zayin Adar, and then the Rebbe asked him, where's the kevish? So he says, the kevish, and he pointed to the Rebbe where it was, the Rebbe said it was too small. So he told the Rebbe, oh, I measured, so the Rebbe said, okay, if you measure, you measure. And then when he came home, he measured it again, and then he saw that he was actually missing a few millimeters. He says it was missing a few millimeters because instead of doing 32 ames on the base, on the base, instead of he said that the kevish is 30 ames. He says 30 ames. So instead of doing 30 ames in the base, you get 32 ames in the top. We're saying he calculated 30 ames on the ramp itself. If you do that, you lose a lot of space. So that's what he did in the beginning. That he built the model based on the dimension of the ramp is 30 ames. If you do that, you're losing a lot. You don't get 32 never because the ramp is along the side. So that was the mistake that he did. Now, he also says in the video that the scale that he used was 1 to 200. So it's interesting that he based on the model of the Beis Hamikdash, he based it on the Rambam. And Hilchot is Bechira, all the dimensions, all the midas he gets from the Rambam. But I did the cheshbon, and when he comes to the kevish of the Mizbeach, he says it was off by 3 millimeters. And if he's using the scale of 1 by 200, it comes out that he was using the kevish. They were explaining according to the Pasuk to get shot in the Gemara. The 32 ames means the base on the floor, including those 2 ames, the am of the Yisrael and the am of the Soivev, and not the way that the Rambam explains it to the Mishnah, the 32 ames is on the right. That's an interesting order. Now, in terms of the angle, what was the slant of the Mizbeach, how hard was to walk on that ramp? So the Gemara at the end of the Gemara in Zvachim, Daf Safar Gimel Dalet, brings that in all of the washing of the Mizbeach, apparently there were other ramps in the Mizbeach. It says that all the ramps were in a way that it was every 3 amas that you walk, there was one amma of elevation. So for every 3 amas you go up 1 amma. So but the Gemara says, but that was for almost all the washing in the Beis Hamikdash. But when it came to the kevish of the Mizbeach, it was a little different. The slant wasn't so high; it was a little lower, as you know, because the height of the Mizbeach was up until where the Maracha was a little less than 10 amas, a little less than 9 amas. It was 8 amas and 5 tefachim, and so that was the side of the height of the kevish, because the kevish reached the lower, and the length is 32 amas, or even if you say 30 amas, it's a little longer than that. So the Gemara says. And then Ash explains what's the reason. The reason is because when the Kohanim would bring the korbanos up, it was heavier, it was heavy, it was not easy to walk. So for the kevish the Mizbeach, they made sure that it wasn't so slanted, the walking up. So I took some time and I measured the 3 ways to build the kevish of the Beis Hamikdash. The first way, according to the Pasuk B'Kishah, they were saying that the 2 amas include the Yisrael and the Sevev. Then you have 32 amas. Actually, it's 30 amas and 10 tefachim. You have to be precise because it's 5 amas and you say the 5 amas. So you have 190 tefachim. We're going to go by tefachim, and then the height of the kevish is 53 tefachim because you have 8 amas is 48 plus 5 amas is 53. So then you calculate according to trigonometry. You can see that the angle according to the Pasuk chart was 15.58 degrees. When it comes to the Rambam in Pirush Mishnah, is that he says the hypotenuse, the ramp itself, the surface was 32 amas, that comes up to 192 tefachim. So you also do the cheshbon, it comes up to a little more. It's 16.02 degrees. That's how much it was the kevish. And according to the way Dov Levanoni was built in his model, was much. He went a little even more because he calculated it was 30 amas the ramp. That's 180 tefachim. By a height of 53, it comes up to 17.12 degrees. There's an interesting in engineering. They always speak about what's the recommended when you have a structure. When you want to come from point A to point B, what should you put in there? Should you just make the floor a little higher? Should you make a ramp? Should you make stairs? Or should you put a ladder? So in general, they say that from 0 to 18 degrees, that's recommended when they say to put a ramp. More than 18 degrees, they say that you should already start building a staircase. So here you see that all the measurements are below 18 degrees, so it goes according to the the ways that the people measure today. Then the kavanah is that we should be zeicha to not only when Mashiach comes, a lot of questions we're going to ask Eliyahu, but these you don't have to ask, you just have to walk to me and see yourself.